Hi everyone, welcome to Newegg TV. My name is Paul. Today I'm going to be doing an unboxing and overview of this new motherboard from GIGABYTE. This is the GIGABYTE Z77X-UP5 TH. Let's start out with a closer look at the retail box. This is an LGA 1155 socket motherboard with the Z77 chipset. That means it supports Intel's second or third generation core processors, that being the second gen Sandy Bridge codename processors or the third gen Ivy Bridge codename processors. And there are some features of the board that are only available if you go with an Ivy Bridge processor, so that would be recommended, but it is compatible with both. I'll try my best to point out the differences as I move along. This is an ultra durable 5 series motherboard. Specifically, they've used some higher quality IR3550 MOSFETs to provide power to the CPU and the iGPU, as well as the memory. Industry-leading 60 amp rated power stage with lower losses, higher efficiency, and excellent thermal management. You also get a bonus Wi-Fi card with Bluetooth 4.0, 300 megabits per second dual band card that's included in the box. And then there's some more information here on the back that's fairly dense. So up here we have some more information about those MOSFETs, 60 amp IR3550s. There's sort of a little diagram of them. They're located beneath the cooling system for the power delivery area, so you're not going to be able to see them except for this little picture here on the box. But over to the right, they've sort of given you a basic example. Traditional MOSFETs get hot, which is why they need to be cooled. GIGABYTE has been using lower RDS on MOSFETs for quite a while, which run cooler, and then these are their newest IR3550s, which run the coolest. And of course, if you can keep your MOSFETs from overheating, then you'll have more stable overclocks, because you also have longer lifespan for the components in the motherboard. Some other items listed over here. First off, dual Uefi BIOS, so you do have a backup you can switch over to if you need to restore your BIOS, or if you happen to have a power failure during a BIOS update, for example. So nice to have that for backup. The TH in the name of this motherboard, UP5 TH, stands for Thunderbolt. So this is one of the first motherboards from GIGABYTE that has Thunderbolt integrated. You have dual mini DisplayPort connectors on the board, and those can support monitors as well as Thunderbolt connectivity. And here's sort of a basic diagram of what Thunderbolt does if you're not really familiar with it. In a single cable interconnect, the Thunderbolt controller on either side can take two-way data from a PCI Express bus as well as one-way data from a DisplayPort display, send it through the same cable so you can daisy chain together external hard drives, other types of devices that use Thunderbolt, and also use it to power a display. So that's pretty cool. And with both of those, each you get 10 gigabits per second. Some other items on the board. Again, the Bluetooth 4.0 plus 300 megabits per second dual band Wi-Fi card. I'll show you that when we get in the box. It's also an SATA connector. Some more stats down here on the bottom right. This is a 333 board, so you get USB 3.0, 3 times USB power. You also get power delivery while the system is off, if you want to set that up. The Z77 chipset gives you Intel Smart Response technology, which is SSD caching, so you can pair a lower capacity SSD with your hard drive to accelerate its performance. You get Virtue MVP, which is a great way to team up your integrated GPU and your Sandy Bridge or Ivy Bridge processor with a discrete graphics card to increase your frame rates, and there's some other functions of that available, such as Intel's quick sync technology for video encoding. You also get HDMI outs, DVI outs, you get the mini DisplayPort outs, all for your iGPU. The board uses all solid Japanese capacitors for a longer lifespan. There's some more indication of that on-off USB charging function. Directx 11 support if you go with the Ivy Bridge processor. And you also have support for two-way Crossfire X or two-way SLI configurations, and this board's fully compatible with PCI Express Gen 3. Again, you only get Gen 3 if you go with an Ivy Bridge processor, because the PCI Express controller is part of the processor, and Sandy Bridge has PCIe Gen 2. Inside the retail box, we have a white box. Inside the white box, we have the motherboard, of course. I'll keep that a secret and bring it back in just a moment after I go through all of the included accessories. Here are some antennae, and those are for the included Wi-Fi card, which is right here. So this is a simple 300 megabits per second. It's dual band, so 2.4 or 5 gigahertz Wi-Fi card. You can plug this into one of the X1 PCI Express slots, and that way you will have Wi-Fi. You also get these nice individual antenna with cables, so you can position those where you get the best Wi-Fi signal. So fairly easy to set that up and add some Wi-Fi to your system. You get some serial ATA cables, so you get 6 of them total. You get 3 that have straight plugs on both ends, and you get 3 that have a straight plug and a angled 90-degree angle plug. Next up, we have the very important instruction manual here for the UP5 TH. In here you'll find information such as layout of the motherboard. I like that Gigabyte likes to give you a block diagram to show you how everything is connected. And then also the detailed specs of the board and a walkthrough of a basic computer installation. So keep that on hand while you're doing your build. It's very important information. You'll also get 2 discs. All right, so this one is a utility DVD, so it's got some Gigabyte software on there as well as your drivers. It's best to get the latest drivers from the Gigabyte website, so go there to download them, although you might need this one, for example, if the LAN connectors, for example, aren't recognized right off the bat. And then this is simply an additional disc with Wi-Fi, Bluetooth. The drivers for that included Wi-Fi card as well as the Wi-Fi utility. You also get a blue Gigabyte case badge right there, so you can put that on the outside of your case. You get a flexible SLI bridge here, so nice that you can do this in variety of configurations for your PCI Express spacing. The ribbon cables I find to be the most versatile, and it's black, so it should match with most case environments. Here is a manual correction that they've inserted, so just a little bit of extra information. You do get an integrated Firewire port. That's one of the upgrades on this board from the UP4. This is some information about, you know what, I'm not sure what this is about. Set your desktop free. This is for the Wi-Fi card. Okay. So the included wireless card, you get a separate manual for that as well. You get a multilingual installation guidebook, so if English is not your first language, that will take you through much of the same stuff that's in the standard manual. You get an input-output shield right there. It is black. It has colored labels on all of the ports, so you can tell what's what. It's also got one of these squishy back plates that provides additional electrostatic protection. You have a USB adapter cable here, and that is to route from the Wi-Fi card right here. There's a separate port on there that takes a 4-pin USB header, and you route that over to plug it into your motherboard to connect that all up. Finally, you have this device, which I find to be quite useful. This is actually a 3.5-inch front panel adapter. So if you have an open 3.5-inch bay on your case, you can pop that in right there. It provides a couple additional USB 3.0 ports, and those are routed back to a 20-pin USB 3.0 connector, so you can plug that straight into the motherboard. This motherboard does have lots of USB 3.0. And now let's take a closer look at the motherboard. First off, color scheme is primarily black. There's some gray, silver, and blue accents throughout. I'm going to flip this over to the back side really quick so you guys can take a look. It has a nice matte black PCB. They provided some additional supports back here for the heat sinks that are on the power delivery units. Those are held on with Phillips head screws, as well as the chipset heatsink down here, so you can remove those if necessary. And now let's take a look at the fan headers. There are 5 of them total on the board, 1 for the CPU plus 4 for system fans. They're all 4-pin headers, and there is 1 here, that's a system fan header. There's your CPU fan header, that's 2. Number 3 right here by the power connector, that's 3. Number 4 down here below the SATA ports, that's 4. And number 5 right down here in the middle beneath the PCI Express. Next up, we're going to take a detailed look at the components and connectors on the board. So we'll start off on the bottom right here. We have a couple USB 3.0 headers. They are 20-pin USB 3.0 headers to connect some. Each of these can control 2 USB 3.0 ports that you might plug in at the front, such as that accessory, a little 3.5-inch bracket that I showed you. And those are both controlled by a VL810 hub, which gives you both of those ports. Next to that, we have a serial ATA connector, and that is actually a SATA revision 3 6 gigabit per second connector. This is one of the upgrades you get with the UP5 TH versus the UP4 TH. That's controlled by a Marvell 88SE9172 chip. It actually controls 2 serial ATA connectors. One is here, the other one is the eSATA connector on the back, and you do actually have RAID 0 and RAID 1 support via that controller. Next to that, you have SW4, that little switch right there will switch between the 2 different BIOSes that are available on the board. So easily to switch back and forth. Next to that you have your front panel connectors. They're color-coded inside. There's also a small diagram which is right at the bottom of the board to give you a better idea of connecting those. You can also reference the motherboard manual if the printing there is a little bit too small. There's a system fan header I already pointed out to you guys. Have a couple USB 2.0 connectors right there, front panel headers. The red one there is going to be the one that will connect to your always on-off charge function, so bear that in mind. There's a little bit of separation there, although again those are both USB 2.0. You have a TPM header right there if you want to do the trusted platform module thing, and then you also get a Firewire connector right there. That's a pin-out header right there underneath the protective cover, another upgrade from the UP5 version. Finally, over here on the left side you have an audio front panel connector right there, so you can connect front panel mic and headphones. You also have SPDIF in and SPDIF out headers right there. Above that we have all of your hardware for the included audio, and the audio on this board is a Realtek ALC898 codec, supports X5 Extreme Fidelity and EAX Advanced HD 5.0 technology, does 7.1 channel out via the analog outputs up on the I/O, which we will come back to when I get there. Next up we have Pci Express. And a few things to note about the Pci Express on this board. Well, you have all the slots right here. I'll start off with the short ones. These little short ones here are Pci Express X1 slots. And actually, this little chip right there, that's a PLX chip, which is a PCI Express hub, and that actually controls these little X1 slots right here, and that makes sure that your PCI Express bandwidth for your actual processor, whether Sandy Bridge or Ivy Bridge, isn't going to be harmed by these little X1 slots. So you can plug stuff in there and still have full bandwidth available for your video cards. Speaking of video cards, you get a full-length X16 PCI Express connector right here, second one right here, and then a third at the bottom. Bear in mind the lower one here will not function unless you're using an Ivy Bridge processor. These PCI Express connectors will all default to PCI Express Gen 2 if you're using a Sandy Bridge processor. You'll get PCI Express Gen 3 if you're using Ivy Bridge, and then the actual lane reservations, you're going to get X16 if you have a single card plugged in here. If you have two cards in, you'll get X8 and X8, and then you can also do X8, X4, and X4. Bear in mind that the NVIDIA SLI spec will not support X4 connectivity, so for NVIDIA you can actually only do two-card SLI, which in most cases is plenty. You can still do quad SLI if you use dual GPU cards like the GTX 690, and then you can do two-way or three-way Crossfire X with the board. Finally, you do have a legacy PCI slot there if you have an older PCI device. Moving over to the right, we have another large heatsink right here. It's fairly flat, looks pretty nice. It's got a Gigabyte logo on it, and that is covering and providing cooling for the Z77 chipset. The Z77 chipset, which handles a lot of stuff on the board, but we like to point out that it does control your serial ATA ports, which are right here on the side. They're side-facing SATA ports, which means they won't conflict with your video cards. The white ones here are SATA revision 3, 6 gigabit per second. The black ones are all SATA revision 2, which is 3 gigabits per second, and you also get RAID support on those via a variety of RAID implementations available via the Z77 chipset. RAID 0, RAID 1, RAID 5, and RAID 10 all supported there. You might have noticed right next to that you actually have a serial ATA power connector. That's actually a power input. So what you're going to want to do if you're running lots of PCI Express cards, so particularly if you're running two-way SLI or two-way Crossfire, you may or may not need additional power depending on the power draw of the cards you have plugged in, but this port right there is put right there for that purpose. So if you need more power, plug that in, plug a serial ATA connector from your power supply in there, and that should provide some more juice to your PCI Express. Here's that third USB 3.0 connector. Again, 20-pin USB 3.0 connector for your front panel. And this one is actually controlled directly by the Z77 chipset. Above that, we have a nice add-on feature here, which is a debug LED. This can actually serve a variety of different functions, but primarily is there to display a postcode. So when you have your system all put together and you start it up, this will cycle through a bunch of different codes. If for any reason you happen to have any difficulty booting up, if your system halts or anything like that, you can reference the code here. It's got a bunch of them listed in the manual, and that will give you a much more detailed explanation of what might be the problem. So if you don't have your memory seated all the way, something to that effect can help you pinpoint that really quickly. Right above that is the system fan header that I showed you at the beginning. Next to that is your 24-pin main motherboard power connector. Up here at the top right, you have some surface-mounted switches. You have a clear CMOS switch button right there, the little black one. The little blue one right there is a reset switch, or reset button, and then finally the big red power button is a big red power button. So nice to have these surface-mounted, particularly if you do an outside-of-the-box build before you install your components. You can use those to easily start up and reset the computer. Next to that, you have your DDR3 slots. You'll notice there are 4. The internal memory controller on your Ivy Bridge or Sandy Bridge processor does support dual channel memory, so you're going to want to install your memory in sets of 2 identical memory DIMMs, and you'll want to use the color-coded slots to make sure you're taking advantage of dual channel capability. It's recommended to use 1.5 volt DDR3 DIMMs, although it does support a wide range. You can do up to 8 gigabytes per DIMM that you install, which gives you a maximum of 32 gigabytes supported, and Intel is actually finally supporting DDR3 speeds of up to 1600 with the Ivy Bridge processors, although it does support overclock speeds beyond that as well, and it does also have XMP support to easily plug in your memory's rated speed within the BIOS. Next to that you have the socket, and this is your 1155 socket. Again, Sandy Bridge or Ivy Bridge processors. You just lift the arm. You also have this little plastic cover on there. You want to keep that on because there are some very delicate pins beneath that you never ever want to have exposed, at least for a very limited period of time, because they are quite delicate. And then you have your mounting solution right around that for your heatsink fan, of course. Your power delivery is right up here on the upper left. You'll notice you have 2 heat sinks. Also, you'll notice that there's a heat pipe that runs from your upper heat sink down here across your left heat sink, and then all the way down the board down to the Z77 heat sink, which is down there at the bottom. So that's going to provide adequate heat dissipation. The heat's going to travel to whichever of these heat sinks is the lowest temperature, for power delivery in particular, up here at the top of the board, you have all these phases in here. That's where you have the specialized MOSFETs, the IR3550 MOSFETs that are beneath here. You also have these nice big fat chokes right there, again 60 amp rated power stages. That's going to provide power to the CPU, the integrated GPU in the CPU, as well as your memory. Up here on the upper left is the other system fan header that I pointed out at the beginning. Also have an 8-pin supplemental CPU power connector. Just turn the board a little bit so you guys can see that. 8-pin CPU connector, which you'll definitely want to plug in. Your system might not boot without it, and make sure you go with a high-quality power supply if you're going to be overclocking, because you want to have nice, good, clean power delivery to the motherboard, especially, well, if you're overclocking. That's why you go with high-quality components if you're an overclocker. Next up, we have inputs and outputs on the side of the motherboard, which will typically face the rear of your computer case in most build situations. First off, you have some display outputs, and these are for the iGPU that's in your Sandy Bridge or Ivy Bridge processor. So you have a D-sub connector right there, and that's for VGA out analog. You also have a dual link DVI out. You also have an HDMI out. And then also for display, you have the mini display port outs right here that can work for display. Also, those work for Thunderbolt. You have a fair amount of USB 3 already integrated on the board, but you get a few more here at the back. So 2 more USB 3 there, 2 more USB 3 there, for 4 USB 3.0 here on the back. There is the eSATA port that's also controlled by the Marvell controller for that G-SATA gray plug that I showed you earlier on. A couple USB 2.0 ports right there, so if you're going for an initial system setup, you probably want to plug your mouse and keyboard in there because you don't always have driver support for the USB 3. You have gigabit LAN via a Broadcom LAN network interface card. And you also have the display port. So the display ports, those are your Thunderbolt connectors. Supports daisy chaining. There's a lot of information in the manual regarding this, but it's very nice to have the Thunderbolt support. Of course, a lot of information on that, so you can check that out. Finally, you have your analog audio outputs here, again, up to 7.1 channel support, and then you also have a Toslink connector there for an SPDIF out. And that's going to wrap it up for this video. Once again, this has been the GIGABYTE Z77X-UP5 TH motherboard featuring the 1155 socket for Intel 2nd or 3rd gen CPUs, 2nd or 3rd gen core CPUs, as well as the Z77 chipset. I'm Paul with Newegg TV. If you enjoyed today's video, you can head over to our Newegg YouTube channel, and of course don't forget to subscribe for more tech videos. Thanks a lot for watching. We'll see you next time.